podcast. Today's episode for me is going to be kind of a continuation of what DC had done. So he did an episode which is currently on file. You can see it on a YouTube page for The Last Defense. He did an episode titled, it's not in front of me at this moment, but something along the lines of the economics of the war with Iran. And essentially, he did a great job at this. It's about 27 minutes long. You should listen to it. He gets into how the war with Iran is not going well for the U.S. For a number of reasons, but one of them is logistics. We are running out of weapons. We, the United States, are running out of missiles, ammunitions, probably fuel, probably money. All of those things are running out, and that's not good for running a war. And I wanted to continue that conversation, but at a little bit of a different level, at like a philosophical level, if you will. I am a big fan of the book 1984, George Orwell. That's his pen name. His real name is Eric Blair. 1984 was, of course, written in the 1940s. Eric Blair worked with the British government during their occupation of India, and he got to see a lot of how things work from the point of view of a sort of more dominant power dominating another power, i.e. the British Empire's rule over India. And so that's why they say 1984 is a book of faction. It's not fact, it's fiction, but it's not completely fiction either. As most of you know, even if you haven't read 1984, people reference it all the time, especially nowadays, because it illustrated the themes, the ideas of a society that is under total control, surveillance, audio recordings, police state, violence against those who dissent, general complete control over the actions and freedoms or lack thereof of the populace, keeping them in line, keeping them paying taxes. That's my dog. He's not in the camera, but you might see him during the show. So how does all tie into the Iran war of today? Well, George Orwell wrote that the greatest problem any given day of the week. I'm writing a book on similar themes, a book called Captured Vermont, that details how, again, a society can be captured on a number of different levels: economic, media, educational system, or healthcare. And I wrote in this book many times, I'm still writing the book, but I used the example of Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain was a Nickelodeon cartoon that came out, I believe, in the late 1990s and or 2000s. It was actually, I believe, in part produced by Steven Spielberg. I think he was involved in it. But in any case, every episode of Pinky and the Brain started the same. There's a fat little rat and a skinny little rat, or mouse. I don't know if they're mouses or rats, doesn't matter. And Pinky would say, "What are we going to do today, Brain?" And Brain would say in like this deep voice, "Same thing we do every day, Pinky. Try to take over the world." And then they would try to take over the world in the ways that a white lab rat's animated cartoon could try to do. It's funny. Didn't really watch it, to be honest, but it's one of those shows that I think it's a good analogy for this podcast, for this episode. So try to think you're a global elite. You want to control resources. You want to control the world. What are the problems? So I typed into Google. I'm screen sharing, so you should be able to see this. Oops, wrong one. This is the one I want to pop up. Here we go. I typed into Google, what did George Orwell say about the purpose of war? Now, I'm very impressed with what came up. My dog doesn't start barking. I'm very impressed with what came up, and you can read it with me because we're screen sharing. In the novel, 1984, George Orwell wrote that, oh goodness. That's my dog. You can probably see him in the background. No, you can't because I'm screen sharing. Want to see my dog? kind of see. Is he there? Is he on the other side? Probably can't see him. It's too dark back there. Okay, hopefully he won't keep woofing. That could be an issue. In his novel, 1984, George Orwell wrote that the true purpose of modern war is to maintain a continuous state of conflict, destroy surplus goods, and keep the ruling class in power. Rather than aiming for victory or territory, perpetual war serves specific social and economic functions. That is a lot. And I have to say, I am impressed that this came from the Google AI, because I grew up from a generation that generally distrust large establishment media search engines such as Google, because they have, in my opinion, a long history of censorship and or not telling the truth about any number of issues, largely relating to current events and so forth. But maybe that's one of the blessings of AI, is for AI to be good, to be genuinely good, it has trouble lying, or it's not lying about this. If I did not have Google AI to answer this for me, I probably would have given, maybe not in such eloquent words, but in any case, I would have said something along the lines of, pinky in the brain, any given day of the week, they want to control your resources, they want to control the middle class, they want to suppress your ability to challenge the status of the upper class. In order to do that, they need to control resources. The best way to control resources, according to George Orwell during the 1940s when he wrote his book, was perpetual war. What does perpetual war do? Well, you need to fuel a war. You need to fund a war. You need to build war machines for a war. You need to send people, humans, into the war. Many of them will be killed. All of these things sound horrible to you or I, or non-pinky in the brain types, normal people who would like to think that most of the people in control of the world, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, have the best interest of humanity in mind. Such, unfortunately, is not always the case, as George Orwell tries to explain. If you're trying to keep a position of power, of elite status, you're not interested in an educated public. You're not interested in a wealthy, up-and-coming middle class. You're not interested in people rising up, becoming smarter, challenging your status of power. A dumbed down, controllable, destitute, poor public is much easier, much more preferable. So from that perspective, again, you got to think like the two rats, Pinky and the brain. If you're thinking about like the rats, this will all start to make sense. If you're genuinely good people and you think that mostly good people run the world, this will not make sense to you. That is why I say people need to read 1984. Let me read a little bit more of what this AI, very, very impressed with this AI response. Makes me have some faith in establishment media. It feels weird just saying that out loud. Continuous conflict. The war is designed to never end, meaning it cannot be won. Keeping power. It is waged by the ruling group against its own people to keep the existing structure of society intact. Justifying control. Constant danger makes citizens willingly hand over all power to a small ruling caste as the only way to survive. A lot of you should be thinking not just about perpetual war. Some of you who are clever out there might be thinking, gosh, it sounds awful lot like what happened 5 years ago with COVID-19. A perpetual problem that cannot be solved. Well, eventually we finally got them we pushed it away, but it took a lot of pushing back from brave and critical thinking citizens to make all that go away. But in any case, you had businesses being shut down, more wealthy, powerful actors buying up and consolidating that power, those businesses. A huge number of small independent businesses around America and the world went under during COVID-19. We could do a whole episode on COVID-19 based on the same concept of perpetual problems. It doesn't have to be perpetual war. It could be a perpetual disease. It could be the perpetual threat of climate change. Notice how every solution proposed for climate change involves sacrifice of the middle class, paying more for your energy, subsidizing via taxpayer money to use forms of energy. That's my dog scratching the floor. Not live radio, live podcasting, not really live, but anyway, podcasting things happen. What else do they talk about here on Google? Destroying wealth and knowledge, of course, consuming surplus. Wars destroy the products of human labor, like materials and supplies, so that people cannot have too many extra goods. Preventing intelligence. If everyone had access to goods and comfort, the general population would become too comfortable and eventually too smart to control. Forcing poverty. By keeping society on the edge of starvation and ignorance, the ruling class can ensures that the hierarchical society remains stable. I mean, it doesn't go on, but it really doesn't need to. That's almost everything you need to know. You could not read 1984, and just this one page from Google AI tells you almost everything you need to know about why the powers that be, generally speaking, pinky in the brain when they're trying to rule the world, they want perpetual problems. It can be a war, but it doesn't have to be a war. It could be a disease. It could be climate change. All it needs to do for them to be happy and for us to be screwed over, meaning us, the general public, middle class, etc., is there needs to be a problem where they're demanding sacrifice from us, which means the Iran war. The whole point of this podcast from the beginning was to continue the conversation about the Iran war. What is the Iran war doing? Dennis Kucinich, the former U.S. senator, Democrat senator, said recently on the Tucker Carlson show, 80% of United States government discretionary income is spent on war, on the Department of War. It is not spent on subsidizing agriculture so that we can eat more affordably, or paving our roads, or building new power plants that are actually efficient in energy. Our space program, schools, healthcare, all the dozens and dozens of things that actually tangibly increase and help improve our quality of living. 80% of our discretionary income. So if you have $100 in your wallet, you're spending $80 on guns and ammo and $20 on your food, rent, and general goods for quality of life. So think about that for a moment. That's a crazy thought. This is the general budget, which of course the Iran war is probably consuming a ridiculous percentage of now. But there's also the Ukrainian war, which the U.S. is largely funding. If you ask me, funding a war is tangibly the same thing as fighting in the war. It's just 1 degree separation away, but the end result is the same. You're paying money for the weapons that are being used in Ukraine to fight the war. How is that different from fighting the war primarily or initially? Not much. In my mind, it's essentially the same thing. And I think Russia's starting to feel the same way too. You can call it a proxy war if you want. It's still a war. Ultimately, the Ukraine war is really a war between the United States and Russia, with Ukraine being like the battleground. But and maybe it's not U.S. soldiers per se on the ground. It doesn't have to be. Their war against Russia, U.S. money is, along with probably European money and so forth, NATO money. But in any case, I know there's a little bit of ranting and bouncing around the place, but all over the place. But the general theme of this podcast, I don't know how much time I'm at right now, but recording has started. Good. It should be. Have I been going for 30 minutes? In any case, the general theme of this podcast is to build on what DC was saying in his podcast, which is that we are running out of resources. And normal people might think this war is crazy. It is stupid because it is hurting the United States. It is hurting our quality of life. We are not winning the war on a tactical or strategic level. Every logically thinking person would think we need to end this war immediately. There's no good reason to keep this war going. But if you're thinking like Pinky in the Brain, if your goal is to simply deplete resources, to hurt the middle class, and to hurt the U.S. economy, and also discredit the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement's kind of screwed right now because the Iran war really spoiled it. A couple other things spoiled it too, but the Iran war really spoiled it. So
If you're thinking like Pinky and the Brain and you're just a corrupt elite that wants to hold power and hold the middle class down, lower class down, not let them rise up, not let them have an economic recovery, not let them have a new renaissance or any of that, not challenge their status as the elite class, then you love the Iran War. The Iran War is doing all of the things that George Orwell talked about. His real name, Eric Blair. The Iran War is accomplishing all of those things for the elite class. It is depleting our resources. It is totally discrediting what was otherwise, until like a year or two ago, a tangible movement. I believe, no, not everybody feels this way. You don't have to agree with everything I believe, but I like to think that the MAGA movement, at least up until the beginning of Trump's second presidency, was genuinely trying to help the middle lower class. It was openly advertised as non-interventionalist, non-war, pro-economy, pro-freedoms, pro-free market. The Iran war is going to wreck has wrecked the credibility of that movement, and it has wrecked the any economic recovery that was happening under the domestic policies of the Trump administration. It is really wrecking all of the good things that could be happening or were happening for the middle class under the Trump administration. The Iran war is wrecking all that. Pinky and the Brain, if they're trying to rule the world, they're very happy. They're like, wow, the middle class is screwed. The lower class is screwed. They're not even going to have time to protest against us. They're going to be so busy working 2 or 3 jobs a day, struggling to pay their gas bills because gas prices went through the roof. And they're going to be sending their sons off to war, so they're going to have no young people to protest or fight against us. This is a win-win-win-win-win for a corrupt elite and all of the military contractors, Raytheon and BlackRock, whatever they're called. They're going to be making bank. They're going to be making tons of money. The U.S. economy is going to be screwed. I know I'm repeating a lot of things, but I feel like that's okay because these are points that need to be hammered down again and again and again. And again, listen to DC's podcast. It's an earlier episode filmed about a week ago about the dwindling resources of the United States, both financial and tactical, the military weapons, missiles and whatnot, fuel, all of those things are being dwindled. And again, Dennis Kucinich made the great point, the really important statistic on the Tucker Carlson show. 80 cents in the dollar of the U.S. discretionary budget is going to military funding. That stat, if you take nothing else away from this podcast, that stat should be implanted into your mind for every political conversation that you have from here on out for the foreseeable future. 80 cents on the dollar, public U.S. tax money goes to war. That is insane. How can you feed your population? How can you fix roads and steam pipes underneath the ground and electronic infrastructure that needs to grow if it's going to support all this AI stuff? None of that's going to happen if you're spending 80 cents in a dollar on war. Of course, how could it? You try running your budget at an 80% reduction. You can't. You wouldn't be able to feed your family. You wouldn't be able to pay for your car. The U.S. government is the same way. You take 80 cents in a dollar off the books, and now you can't run a nation. And if you go out driving here in Vermont, like I did today for my job, there's potholes all over the place because the government, the state governments, and the municipal governments don't have any discretionary money left over to pave the gosh darn roads. Probably because 80 cents of our total tax dollars in this nation are going to war. I repeat that stat again for a reason. Well, with that, my dog didn't actually jump up into the podcast, so I was kind of hoping he would. Maybe a different time. So this is The Last Defense. Please catch me and DC, and we will record an episode with the two of us later this week, as we did the last 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks. And thank you for listening. And peace out. Say no to war.